I only heard these sounds after moving to America. I'm really intrigued. Like, what sounds? I mean, the only sounds I could think of are like maybe animals that we don't really have here in the UK, which America has quite a few of. But other than like animals and things like that, what could they be? This is from Lawrence of Lost in the Pond. Brit who's lived in America for like I think 10 to 15 years. So yeah, let's find out what sounds these are.
Hello. For some reason, I woke up next to a tree this morning, and that reason could be because I couldn't get to sleep in my actual bed because for the first time in as many days, it was autumn.
Let's go.
And that meant that my bedroom was completely silent, and you might be watching this thinking, I'm really confused right now, and if you are, that you could be British. Because in America, for the most part, your bedroom and most of the rooms in the house, especially in the summertime, are not silent. There's this little thing called white noise. And white noise is this thing that seems to permeate American society in general, and something that Americans tell me that they can't do without when they go to bed. And for me, it's the other way around. You know, in Britain, I grew up with just really quiet, peaceful bedrooms, with the exception of my dad snoring in the next room. I sort of got used to that for 26 years.
So Americans, you guys use like a lot of white noise sort of machines to help you get to sleep. What is it that you struggle with the silence? Like, why do you like any white noise users here? Why do you like using it?
I got used to this sort of just, I don't know, this general silent ambience. Is that even a thing? And then when I moved to America, bear in mind this was in the winter, so it hadn't yet happened yet, but by the time the summer started to heat up, we were putting on the air conditioning units, right? And of course, famously, we still haven't come around to that idea in the UK.
Which we need to, because the summers are getting really hot and I cannot live without an air conditioner anymore. I'm definitely going to get one this year.
Just became this thing. It sort of happened to me that as soon as I moved here, without realizing it, was falling asleep to white noise. And I think after about a year of that, it sort of clicked that this isn't how things used to be. So in America, every autumn, it takes me right back to me childhood. Briefly, because then the winter turns up and you have to have a fan on in the bedroom because the heating is too hot. It's like a catch-22. But while I was laying there awake at night and before I fell asleep next to this tree, I had some thoughts about some of the other sounds that I commonly hear in the United States that I would never have heard in England. And if you listen carefully, you can probably hear one of those sounds right now.
Bird singing, yeah.
Hear that? That is, well, North American bird species.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. You don't really hear birds singing in London unless you go to a park. Like, you wouldn't, which is also a park. But even then, you don't really hear them. Why is that?
Most likely anyway, because in the UK, the bird that you would hear most commonly is a wood pigeon, because it makes that really distinctive sound all across most of Europe, I think. And it just goes, whoop, 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 whoop. I realise I'm making bird sounds in public. Here, you don't really hear that sound very often because wood pigeons aren't native to North America. And instead, you'll hear the sounds of many birds. I mean, here in the Midwest, you've got cardinals, you've got the red-winged blackbird, you've got mourning doves, which of course comprise about 33% of my own family. And so the general bird ambience differs greatly between Britain and the United States. And of course, America, being the giant country that it is, boasts a stupid amount of birds.
There is something nice about hearing birds singing. Like, it just makes me think of like a warm, like spring or summer's day. You know, there's something like nicely relaxing about it.
And an amount of stupid birds, but that's every country. And, you know, the noise or the sound, the ambience that they produce differs immensely depending on where you are in the country. So I can only speak for here. I've seen a cardinal sitting outside of my house on a telephone wire dropping a massive but all the time chatting. So if you are the sort of person who's really into birds, which is all English people once they pass the age of 40, then if you move to America, get yourself a bird book. So those things still, I don't know if they exist, but look it up on the internet, which birds are in your local area. And then what about the sound that you hear at a zebra?
To be fair, that would be like a chill thing to do. Definitely, you probably don't see a lot of young people doing it, but, you know, if there's loads of birds around you, it would be fun to know what kinds of birds they are.
For crossing/crosswalk. Again, those differ all throughout the United States. Where I live, you hear things like The crosswalk sign is on. The crosswalk sign is on. And we get the picture, mate. And I've been to places here where it almost sounds like a machine gun, like, right, which really makes you want to run across the road, so at least it gets its job done efficiently. But it is mildly terrifying. In Britain, I can't really remember how it goes.
You never hear anything like that. Literally, you'll just see the green man, and that's the sign for you to, walk across the road. Like, there'll be a red light for the cars and a green walking man.
Something like beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, maybe a beep.
Probably making that up. Producers, can we look up what it sounds like in Britain?
Yeah, that's literally it. Literally.
Over the last 2 years, one sound that I've heard commonly here in Chicago is my cat, but also tornado sirens.
Wow, that's very sinister sounding.
Tornado sirens go off when we're put into a tornado warning, and that's when we have to go down to our basement, get away from all of the windows, and just sort of stay put until the local authorities tell us that we can leave. In fact, my cat is well drilled in this by now. And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, why are you including tornado sirens and not tornadoes themselves? And the reason is simple, because while tornadoes might be devastating when they do in fact strike, Americans are likely going to hear more tornado sirens in their life than they are tornadoes. Wow. And come to that, Britain isn't itself without the odd twister, and I'm not just referring to the sweaty board game.
I can't honestly remember ever seeing a tornado here in the UK. I imagine they probably happen, out where there's lots of flat land. So that, because I think tornadoes need flat land and other things to happen. In London, there's just too many buildings, I think. I don't know if you could have a tornado here.
As a matter of fact, England experiences more tornadoes per square mile than any other country on Earth. What? It's just that none of them are strong enough to feature in films with Helen Hunt. Right. So they very rarely cause fatalities. I promise I am happy about that. This is just my default face. But the tornado siren is most certainly something I'd never heard until I moved to the United States, although that's not entirely true. Because in Britain we do have such sirens, and they were once used for alerting us to air raids, and nowadays to another weather phenomenon, floods. But I can tell you unequivocally that nothing prepared me this year for the moment when I was just standing in a wooded area with my wife, and all of a sudden, that's not a...
Yeah, why do they make them so scary sounding? Like, I suppose, yeah, it probably is more effective at getting people to run.
Plane in a heavy wind. That is the siren, just my impersonation of it. And it was deafening. It was deafening. I genuinely thought the Germans were coming until I looked at my calendar, realised it was an invisible watch and that it wasn't the 1940s. So perspective is everything. I mean, it's always nice when you can just sit there and say, thank goodness it's just a tornado. Anyway, normally when we're hankering down in that shelter, otherwise known as the basement, you do find yourself morbidly listening out for that whoosh sound, right? Or at least I do. But most of the time, all you're left with is crickets. Not literally, that would be weird. Although it does bring me on to another point, crickets. I'm not talking about the sport. Of course, we hear that.
That's a good one. Like in Florida, I remember hearing a lot of like, it's hard to describe what they sound like, but that cricket sound, like kind of like that.
All the time in the English summer, not so much here. But
or cicadas or cicadas. How do you pronounce
crickets, that? The insect.
Yes.
I've talked about these before, of course. The sound that they make is very prominent on this side of the ocean. In Britain, we don't have that ambience, and it's a blooming shame because it's a very relaxing sound. I've never really articulated that before. I've talked about crickets on this channel in the past, but it is. It's a sound that I can actually sit there in the park listening to crickets, which is weird because this is insects mating, or at least sending out a mating call. And I'm there.
Is that what it is? Wow. I thought that was just like their default. That's what they just did. I didn't realize it was like, hey guys, I'm ready to mate.
They're casually listening in on it. Imagine if it was humans and I was doing that. It seems like we have alternative rules when it comes to other members of the animal kingdom. I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong. I don't want to do that to humans who should keep themselves to themselves. So those are just some of the sounds that I thought of when I woke up next to that tree this morning. And Mum, if you are watching, I didn't really wake up next to a tree. It's just for the narrative of this video. It's a weird narrative. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments.
Fun video. Yeah, I think because America's just so big, right? Even beyond these sounds, there's probably tons of other ones that you would hear on a regular basis that you wouldn't hear like over here. For example, if you lived in Alaska, you know, if you're out in the woods, you're probably quite accustomed to hearing the sounds of like bears, you know, in the background, which would be super scary, wouldn't it? But yeah, like what sounds do you guys hear, you know, on a regular basis? Like put them in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.